In a time of famine and loss, one woman's life unraveled in a foreign land. Naomi lost her husband, then her sons, until all she had left was sorrow and a daughter-in-law named Ruth. But from the ashes of grief came a story of loyalty, courage, and divine redemption. This is not just a tale of tragedy. It's the journey of a woman who dared to believe again, a foreigner who became part of the royal bloodline of a king. The story of Ruth, from grief to glory. Once upon a time, in the land of Judah, there was a famine. Desperate for survival, a man named Elimelech took his wife, Naomi, and their 2 sons, and left their home in Bethlehem. They journeyed to the land of Moab, a foreign country, hoping to find food and a future. At first, things seemed to go well. Their sons married Moabite women Ruth and Orpah. But then, tragedy struck. Elimelech died, and as if that grief wasn't enough, both of Naomi's sons also passed away. In a foreign land, Naomi was left completely alone, a widow, with no sons, no future, no hope. Only her 2 daughters-in-law remained by her side. Broken and bitter, Naomi decided to return home to Bethlehem. She heard the famine had ended. Before leaving, she turned to Ruth and Orpah and urged them to stay in Moab, to go back to their families and try to rebuild their lives. "You still have time to remarry, live a normal life," she said. Orpah kissed Naomi goodbye through tears and walked away. But Ruth clung to her. With trembling lips and unwavering eyes, Ruth spoke words that would echo through eternity. "Where you go, I will go. Where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God will be my God." In that moment, Ruth chose not just Naomi but God. She chose loyalty over comfort and faith over familiarity. So the 2 women began the long journey back to Bethlehem. Widowed, weary, worn out. They had no money, no land, no husbands, and no protection, just each other and faith. When they arrived, the women of the town whispered, "Is this Naomi?" But Naomi replied, "Don't call me Naomi. Call me Mara, for the Lord has dealt bitterly with me." Yet even in her bitterness, God was already unfolding a greater plan. In order to survive, Ruth went out to gather leftover grain from the harvest fields. It was back, breaking work meant for the poor, but she didn't complain. Day after day, she toiled under the sun, bending, lifting, collecting scraps. What Ruth didn't know was that she had wandered into the field of a man named Boaz, and Boaz was watching. Boaz, a wealthy and respected landowner, asked his workers, "Who is that young woman?" They told him of her loyalty to Naomi, of her hard work and humility. Boaz was moved. He approached Ruth and said, "Stay in my fields. Drink from my water jars. I've told the men not to touch you." And then he said something even more beautiful. "May the Lord reward you, under whose wings you have come to take refuge." Favor had found Ruth, and she didn't even realize it yet. When Ruth returned home with an abundance of grain, Naomi's eyes lit up. "Where did you glean today?" she asked. When she heard it was Boaz's field, hope returned to her heart. "Boaz is a relative of ours, a family redeemer," Naomi whispered. "This could be God's hand at work." And with wisdom and love, she began to guide Ruth into a new chapter. One evening, Naomi instructed Ruth to go to the threshing floor where Boaz would be resting. Ruth obeyed. Quietly, she uncovered his feet and laid therein a symbolic act of humility and request for protection. When Boaz awoke, startled, Ruth said, "Spread your garment over me, for you are a redeemer." It was bold. It was brave. It was pure faith. Boaz, deeply touched by her integrity and honor, did not turn her away. Instead, he promised to do everything in his power to redeem her properly and lawfully. The very next day, Boaz went before the town elders. He declared his intent to redeem Naomi's land and take Ruth as his wife. With the crowd's blessing, it became official. Ruth, the Moabite widow, was now part of a new family. Her story was no longer one of sorrow but redemption. The wedding bells rang. Joy and laughter echoed through Bethlehem. Ruth, once a foreigner and widow, now stood adorned as a bride, loved and celebrated. God had not forgotten her. And in this moment, Naomi, once bitter and broken, smiled, again watching God's restoration unfold before her very eyes. Not long after, Ruth gave birth to a son, Obed. Naomi cradled the baby in her arms, tears of joy falling from her eyes. The women of Bethlehem gathered around and said, "Naomi has a son." This child was not only a sign of redemption, but of legacy. Obed would grow up to become the father of Jesse, and Jesse would become the father of King David, and from the royal line of David would one day come the Messiah Jesus Christ. Ruth, the outsider, the faithful one, the woman who chose God. She became the great-grandmother of a king and part of the divine story of salvation. Ruth's journey teaches us that faithfulness, loyalty, and courage never go unnoticed by God. Even in the darkest of times, even when hope seems lost, God is at work redeeming, restoring, rewriting our stories. You may feel like Ruth today, forgotten, grieving, uncertain. But remember this: when you choose faith over fear and kindness over bitterness, God writes legacies from your life. If Ruth's story inspires you, type "Faith Wins" in the comments. Like, share, and subscribe to hear more stories of hope, purpose, and God's amazing grace.